The Marvelous Journey Home is an emotional story of a father, a mother, and their adopted children as they come together to form a family despite great distances.
It's fiction, but the book is loosely based on the author's personal experience, and it follows the ups and the downs of international adoption.
So joining us now is John Simmons, author of The Marvelous Journey Home. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And 9 kids we mentioned.
Yeah.
That's your family, but not all of them are adopted, right?
No. We had 3 biological sons, and then we turned to adoption, and we ended up adopting a little boy with Down syndrome who was an infant.
Mm-hmm. And why adopt a child with special needs?
You know what? That's a difficult question. We wanted to do something that we thought there was nothing in it for us. Mm-hmm. And as we got Jack home, he did more for our family than we'll ever do for him. So it was kind of, we did it for one reason, but it didn't work out that way.
Mm-hmm. And then you adopted children from Russia.
Right. We waited until Jack was about 8 years old before we started looking into adoption again, but we wanted some girls. And we ended up turning to Russia. We adopted 2 biological sisters, Sarah and Celeste, who were 5 and almost 3 at the time we got them home. And then a non-related little boy, Denny, who was almost 2 at the time.
And then what led you to, because you ultimately adopted 5 children from Russia. Mm-hmm. So what ultimately led you then to more?
Russia requires 2 trips for an international adoption. So first we went over and met the children and kind of got the ball rolling. And then 2 months later we were back to finish the adoption. And when we went back to finish it, we were looking through some paperwork and noticed that there were other children, biological siblings to the little girls that we'd adopted. And so we came back, kind of got things lined up, and then started working on the adoption of the older girls.
And there's your family, all 9 children, and you and your wife. What a clan that is.
Yeah.
That's a lot of children.
And what an experience, too. I mean, in fact, this led you to write an entire novel. It is fiction, but obviously it's based on your personal experience. And you're not the typical author. I mean, your background's in engineering, machinery, tools.
Right.
But this must have struck you so much.
There were really 2 things. As we got over and met Sarah, who was 5 at the time, and all of her little friends, my heart went out to the orphans. As we'd show up at the orphanage with the coordinators, little children, 5, 7, 8, would run up to the coordinators and say, "Did you find my mama and papa yet?" Mm-hmm. And they'd say, "No, we're still looking." And some of these kids you'd look at and know they would never be adopted. And I thought, people don't know these kids are here. There are so many homes that could take on another child, and they just don't know they're here.
And there are so many orphans and other children still waiting for homes. And that's part of the problem I've heard, is that couples don't usually want to adopt older children. In your case, you did, but most couples want an infant.
Yeah, they do. And as you start looking into adoption, there are so few infants available that the adoption agencies are very good at saying, look, there are pros and cons to each way, and you can move the process along faster. You'll have a lot bigger selection if you move away from an infant. And so that's kind of what you do. You have to get in with adoption and figure what's best for your family. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What would be a real challenge for your family? Or what are some special talents that you have that might help a child who could come into your home?
And those are some of the issues I'm sure that you tackle in your book. What else do you want people who read your book to come away with?
I mentioned the orphans, but as I packed Celeste out of her orphanage, she had a really special relationship with the director there. And she would call her Mama Oksana, and everything was Mama Oksana, Mama Oksana. And she just loved this woman. In fact, the woman had thought about adopting Celeste, but her husband had some health issues and she wasn't able to. As she handed her to my wife to walk out of the orphanage, Celeste just lost it. And she screeched and screamed and cried, Mama Oksana, Mama Oksana. And as we got out on the steps of the orphanage, my wife handed her back to Oksana and then went and sat in the car and cried. And the coordinator said to me, John, it doesn't get easier for them from here. Everybody said goodbye. They get more upset, not less. Go get her. And I walked up on the steps, and Oksana gave her a kiss and told her she loved her and handed her to me, and I started to walk to the car. And as I walked to the car, Celeste just screeched and screamed and tried to lunge out of my arms onto the ground, screaming, Mama Oksana, Mama Oksana. And I thought, if you had any idea where I was taking you, you wouldn't act like this. And I was thinking about family and education and opportunities, but I was thinking about red Corvettes and big houses and some of the things that we've been very fortunate to have. And as I turned and looked back at Oksana, she was crying, but she was consoling herself in the thought that it's okay because she's going to a better place. And I thought, I wonder if that's what death is like. Everybody says when we die, we go to a better place. And I thought, Oksana couldn't possibly understand where I'm taking this child. She's a doctor and she lives in an apartment complex that's crumbling to the point where you can see the rebar. I thought, she thinks she's going to a better place, but she just doesn't know.
And the basis for your book.
Right.
I love that. And the cover is the daughter that you adopted. She was 3 on the
Right.
cover of the book. She's now 5, but what a precious cover that is.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask, where can people get your book?
It's available at most bookstores. For sure, you can get it at Barnes & Noble or at Amazon.com, or it's available from our website, themarvelousjourneyhome.com.
And you also have a book signing that's going on tonight
We
at Barnes
do.
& Noble at Bayshore from 7 to 9 o'clock.
Right. We'd love to have people there. We'll have lots of pictures from Russia about the adoption, and it'll just be a fun visit.
And I love the fact that you can talk to parents about things they should consider. You mentioned so many of those things, like what talents do you have, what things are you good at or not so
Right.
good at. I know there are a lot of people who are interested in adoption could have some really good questions for you that you'd help them
Right.
help them with. So thank you so much for being here. Your book is great.
Well, thank you.
And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here,
Absolutely.
John.